If you want to see a real-life example of how a marketing agency productized their service, look no further. In this episode, I'm interviewing Spencer Powell of builderfunnel.com. They are a marketing agency for custom home builders and remodelers. In this episode, he's actually going to share how he followed a lot of what we preach around having 3 income streams, a done for you, a done with you, and a DIY, to transform his custom services agency into a very specialized, productized delivery structure for his clients and how it's working extremely well. So let's hop over into the interview. All right, guys. So I'm joined here with Spencer Powell from builderfunnel, and I'm super stoked to chat with him today and kind of have him share his story. For the kickoff, like, Spencer is not a client. We have not worked with him, but he reached out after watching one of our YouTube videos around how agencies should have 3 income streams, and we started chatting, and he was sharing about everything he was doing. And I was like, hey, let's have you deconstruct your journey in moving from one offer to multiple income streams. So Spencer, dude, first, thanks for reaching out. Thanks for, checking out the content, and stoked to have you.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. And yeah, you're doing awesome stuff. I feel like agency space can be really challenging, but then if you get a couple things clicked in, not that it's not hard anymore, but it's easier.
Yeah,
easier than
absolutely. So give a quick high level, like builderfunnel, who do you serve and what do you guys do as it stands right now?
Cool. Yeah, so we're pretty niche focused. We serve remodeling companies. We kind of fall under the design build umbrella. So design build remodelers and then some custom builders, but it's all interior stuff. So not the generally kitchens, baths, additions, whole home, not a lot of just windows and siding guys. And we help them generate more leads.
So my first question is, when I see, a lot of what we talk about on our YouTube channel and with our clients is that in order to kind of go to this multi-income stream model, that where there's done for you, done with you, DIY type offerings, that there's a kind of a precursor of really needing to specialize. And so you obviously are specialized in the who you serve. That's a very specific market. So the first question really is, where did that market selection come from? Do you have a background in this? How did you end up with them?
Yeah, I'll give you the short, long family history. So basically, I come from 4 generations of home builders out in the Seattle market. And so at the time that I was getting out of college, I was like, I want to start my own thing. Started a social media business because that was when Facebook business pages were new and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But really, I started working with my uncle's company at the time. So that was the 4th generation. They were doing a lot of spec building, and the Great Recession hit, and they were doing no spec building. And so they pivoted to remodeling and custom homes. And I clipped in and just started doing blogging and SEO and social media and trying to just figure it out. This was 2010-ish. And we took their remodeling division from 2 million to 10 million over about 4 years and kind of figuring out the online space. And so then we're like, well, I think we can go help other people do this. And we dabbled for a little bit. We took on other clients from other industries. And after a while, it was just this is so freaking hard. You have to figure out every industry every time for every client. Everything is custom. And you really needed somebody that could be a marketing strategist and a good listener and really dig in and understand all the pains to actually do a good job for that client. And you couldn't really systematize a lot. So we took that leap eventually, and we created the builderfunnel brand, said we're just going to serve this audience. But it really, at the beginning, it was builders, remodelers, and contractors, which is still a massive industry. And over the last 10 years, I'd say we've just chipped away and narrowed it within even that bucket of residential construction.
I love that. And I think, takeaway for those watching or listening is just I think many people would lump like you said, the builder, the remodeler, and what was the third one?
Contractors.
So specialty, and they're oh, that's niche enough. And it's you could actually niche even further into residential remodel. And that's kind of where a lot of the unlock, seemed to happen. So that's super cool. Because again, one thing that I harp on a lot, and we get a lot of folks that kind of inquire about joining our programs, and they had spent 2, 3, 5+ years of doing I've worked with all of these different types of clients, but they didn't have any family history or any just breakout success story from any one of those types of clients that really allowed them to simply be oh, yeah, I got to go to, remodelers. Some of them don't even have the experience to go and have enough reps in any one niche to to pick. And so I think that's kind of why I started with that question, because I think a lot of people get ahead of themselves. They see, oh my God, yeah, multiple income streams, I'm stuck in fulfillment. And it's well, yeah, you're stuck in fulfillment, kind of like you alluded to, because every client's different and then they all need different systems. So that's kind of a common challenge. So that's good that you have that experience.
I would throw something else in there too. One thing, it was really tough to make that decision. I'm not gonna lie, I was sitting there and thinking like, I know I should do this, but it still feels like way too challenging. And I would encourage people listening to just think through what you want to target, like where you've had success, those, and then just pick, because everything got easier. Like marketing is easier because now you're only focused on attracting them. Sales is easier because you know where the pain points are, you know the problems you actually solve, and you actually do solve them because that's all you do. And you get this depth of experience that then positions you against other agencies. So like they're not just going to go with the local agency anymore because you're the specialist. And so I will say it was very difficult, even though logically you talk through all those points. It's like, yeah, that makes sense, but it's emotionally, it was tough to do because you're like, I'm turning away everything else. But
yeah,
really,
I mean, can you go a little bit deeper on that? Like, I know exactly what you're feeling because I had done the same thing, but like a lot of people, I think, will be nodding their head right now and they'll agree with you, but they still won't kind of make it happen. So like, can you talk a little bit about like, why was it so scary, and like kind of the mix between the logic and the emotion? Like, were there any things that you actually did to finally make that decision?
Yeah, I think it's scary because it feels like you won't have enough opportunity, because up to this point, you've attracted opportunity from several industries. And so now you're saying, well, I'm picking this one industry that maybe I only have like 1 or 2 clients in, and now I'm going to say no. And so all of your inquiries and probably all your marketing and sales efforts to this point has just been like sporadic and all over the place. And so it does require you to kind of focus. And what I would say is like, you don't have to just drop all those clients that are not in that industry right away, but you just start focusing all of your marketing efforts. One of the things we did was we actually just created a side brand, which became the main brand. Long story, we were wrapped in with my dad's direct mail company at the time. We started a digital division. So it was like TMR Direct was the old school company name, and we were just serving everyone. We created builderfunnel as like a signal saying like, yep, we're actually committing to this. And that helped me too, because I was like, okay, like our name is around this. It's not like we're trying to serve other people. And so I think that helped a ton. And then we just, everything we did for marketing, all of our blogs, our videos, our podcasts, it was all speaking directly to that audience. You go on LinkedIn, you're only looking for those companies, you know, so like all these big pockets online get a lot smaller, and you go, oh, my audience is here and it's here and it's here. Oh, we'll go to this one trade show. And now, you know, you've got a clear path and you start picking up momentum.
I love it. And so you made the kind of decision to focus on remodelers. And what was the offer when you first started? Can you talk through like the evolution of the offer?
Yeah, it was pretty ugly early. I mean, I would say it wasn't a strong offer. It was still in that like 2011, 12, 13. And especially when you think about the context of our industry being remodelers, they're typically way behind on tech, on websites, on digital marketing. And so we kind of were coming in, we had something new and different to them. And it was, we're going to make your website generate leads. And so we followed the standard like inbound methodology, is like, we're doing these things to drive traffic. It's blogging, it's SEO, it's social, it's paid. We're doing these things to increase leads, right? There's top of funnel and bottom of funnel. So we're going to create like your remodeling cost, you know, document, you know, guide, ebook, you know, process checklist, starting to capture top of funnel leads. Now we're going to build a nurturing sequence to like stay in front of these people. Hey, if they're doing a $500,000 remodel, they're probably going to think about it for a while. So we need to have like an email program. And so we just kind of had like activities that filled the funnel like all the way through. And we just charge like a setup fee that would take a couple months and then go into a retainer. But it was like I had to diagnose on every sales call kind of like where they were, look at their analytics, and try to build like this customized retainer package for every single client. And so finding somebody else that could sell was virtually impossible, because they had to know remodeling, they had to know marketing really well, digital marketing, and then they also had to know how to sell, and finding that like person. So I was always stuck in the sales seat, and then you get pulled into operations when you're small because you're still doing some of the stuff as you build out your team. And so the offer really was just, this is our philosophy.
We're going to do all this stuff.
You know, we're going to do this stuff. And, you know, and it was like, they hadn't really done it before. So it was going from like 0 to that.
So I'm curious, because I know that a lot of agencies that kind of would model that same kind of flow is like, hey, we do, you know, an audit, we kind of give you a custom proposal, and, you know, the first few months we're setting up some stuff, and then we're managing campaigns. Was it so successful that you weren't charging enough, and that's where you realized things were starting to break? Or were clients not staying because it was so much and they were like, well, we're not seeing any results, it's taking too long to get all this stuff going, and like too chaotic? Or was it something completely different?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the one thing that we did well from the start is we always put people on retainer, and we only did 12-month contracts. So we did get people thinking longer term from the start. I would say our problem shaded more towards not charging enough, and we'd keep clients. Like we had a pretty good, lifetime value that stayed for a couple of years, something like that. But yeah, we kept having to like figure out how to raise our rates, and, you get pushback and you'd have legacy clients, and then you try to bring people on at a new rate, but then you're like, but we also just need the business. So we'll just, sell it at our old rate this time because I think we can do it. And so we probably over delivered for a long, long time. We probably still do in some areas,
Yeah. Got it. Okay, cool. And so then like, what was the straw that broke the camel's back where you're like, all right, something's got to change here. This is not sustainable?
Yeah, honestly, we've made it down that path for about 10 years. Yeah, it wasn't until very recently. Yeah, I think it's been maybe 18 or 20 months or something. And I was looking at the trajectory because we were starting to pick up steam. And I think part of that was like we had made the shift, focused on the vertical, really invested in content marketing and our own efforts. And we were starting to build, like we had a podcast, YouTube channel, pretty good email list, good blog. And so we were generating some inbound activity. But I could kind of see this path where I was like, well, I'm the only one selling still. And then as you get bigger, your churn rate, even if it's pretty good, like our retention rate is 80%, 70% raw, and then 80% what we can control. Like if somebody goes out of business, we count that as like raw retention rate. But even at that, like if you're doing, $1.5 million a year and you churn 30%, and then you kind of scale that out and you're like, well, if we get to 2.5 or 3 and then we churn, I could kind of see the writing on the wall where it's like, eventually we'll flatline. Like I'll sell whatever our churn rate is, and then we'll just kind of hang out there. And so I was like, well, we need to figure out how somebody else can sell. And so I've been like grinding on that for a year or something, just like trying to figure out how are we going to do this. And then really the idea of like productizing, I think came onto my scene, follow a lot of your stuff, and then bumped into Alex Hormozy's book, The $100 Million Offers. And like, it just kind of like started clicking. I was like, you know what? Yeah, we need to like create a killer offer. And I was like, I feel like we have a lot of the components. It's just not packaged that way. And it's definitely not sold that way. It's not marketed that way. And so I read the book, and I think I just sat down with my marketing director, my president. We just like busted through 4 or 6 weeks, like figured it out, cranked it out. Like, we're like, okay, we're going to this. We do a remodeling conference every year in the fall where we have a booth. And that's like our only show that we do a booth. And, and we're like, we got to launch it there. So we like did the whole thing. And then that fall in Q4, we sold our first 3 blueprints. And we originally thought we would sell it at like 30 grand. And then we were like, we'll do 20 grand as like discount pricing or whatever since we're just launching it. And now that's just become our standard price. So I probably have already like, cheated myself there by saying like, anytime you discount, like in your head, now that's kind of your price for your own thing. But I think it's worked out well kind of where we have it priced. But that is like a standard package and process, and it mirrors our clients. So we're like design build for marketing. Like the design is the strategy, the research, and the plan. Just like for you, you don't just run into a kitchen and start ripping out walls. Like you work with the client to design the kitchen, scope it out, figure out the budget. And so it was a long time before we figured it out. And then, yeah, we sold 24 of them last year, but like 12 in Q4. And now like we're on pace. It's going to be a good year. So.
And so can you explain to folks what the blueprint exactly is? You mentioned it's 20K, and I know that, you shared that there's kind of like multiple variations of how you can fundamentally move people through that blueprint. So what is the blueprint? What are you involved with at the high tier?
Yeah, so the high tier for us is the totally done for you. We start with the blueprint. This is kind of what it ends up looking like, a finished product. It's like 150 pages of research audits of their site, looking at competitive analysis, their competitor sites, looking at their current traffic, lead flow. Like we do zip code analysis too, because they want to target like certain neighborhoods that are certain income ranges, look at household value, really granular stuff and stuff that's, relevant to them as remodelers. It takes about 4 or 5 weeks, and then they can either take the blueprint and just self-implement it. So we pair that with all of our training videos, all of our SOPs that we built up over the years. Like if they just want to hire a marketing intern off the street, like we tell them they could do a pretty good job with like the blueprint plus the training, and then, or they can have us self-implement, implement with us. And so that turns into the like, hey, we'll implement the plan, and that's going to be $3,500 to, $7,000 a month, somewhere in that range, just depending on what was in the plan and what their goals are and all of those types of things. So full service is blueprint plus implement. Done with you is blueprint plus we'll give you the tools and you go do it, figure 8 hours a week to do it. And then we do have some DIY that we can get into if you want to.
With the done with you. So the 20K blueprint, they get all of the plan, all the internal SOPs and training videos. Is there any layer of support and interaction from your team?
So they get access to some of our like DIY stuff is just like bundled in as bonuses. So we have an online community called Remodelers Growth Community that has all of our training videos, but they can like ask questions in there. Our whole team's in there answering questions, like fielding support and stuff like that. And then we have formal, like a 6-month consulting check-in, like zoom out. How are you doing on the plan? Are you actually implementing? Do we need to make any changes? And then we have a 10-month one, which is like as they're wrapping up, but then working to sign them on for year 2 blueprint.
So the 20K gives them that year.
Correct.
And you're checking in with them. Sounds like there's some group elements, some on-demand stuff, and you're having like a one-on-one touch point at least at 6 months to see how things are going. Do they pay another 20K to go into the next year?
They do, unless they're done with you. Yeah.
And they're done with you. So basically it's like it's AR. They would lose access. They would lose access to the 20K, all the training and stuff going into year 2.
Correct.
Got it. And does your market typically pay in full, or are you kind of collecting that over monthly payments?
It's either pay in full or 3 payments of 7.
Okay, cool. And so explain then the DIY.
So the DIY, we launched a online community, and our theory was like, if we have a community where we're bringing in other thought leaders aside from ourselves on the marketing side, but sales, operations, finance, like other areas of their business, doing webinars, having them, contribute content, answering questions, participating. Maybe we can build this moat, around our audience, and then we'll get people to ascend, over time. So it's a very long-term play, like, hey, we'll just start building this community. We thought we were like, got all in on the premium pricing with the blueprints. We're like, we'll price this premium like a couple $100 a month. And we realized like we weren't getting much. So that's $49 a month. We're actually considering making it free. But anyway, that's where it stands today is $49. And then we have a done for you social media program, which is $199 a month. And it's basically templates, reels, like everything pre-built content that they could share on social media across several platforms. But it's all pre-built in Canva, so they can just like drag and drop their own photos, tweak the text a little bit. Like all the reels are synced to the music, so they just have to it's basically a huge time saver for them. But it's in that you just subscribe every month, you get access to a whole month of content. It's like enough to post 3 to 5 times a week. And then you can either post as is or swap out your own stuff. So the DIY is, a couple $100-$300, depending on if you're part of both of those. But if you do the blueprint, you just get 1 year access to both of those at no extra charge.
Got it. And so talk to me about first I'll kind of pull back. One of the things that I love about this, and that I think some people approach not correctly, at least, or not in a wise way, is you've stacked all of these things on top of each other. It's not like we've seen some people okay, my done for you is we're doing this whole blueprint, and the done with you is a fraction of it. It's it's still the same outcome fundamentally. It's just the vehicle and the level of support to get to that outcome looks different. So I like that. I like how it's kind of stacked on that. There's some examples of we have clients where their done with you would be they would actually sell the blueprint as they're done with you. And then that would be handheld, kind of there'd be a lot of hand holding through that. And then it would be all right, well, we can coach you for another year with support. And that would be kind of a continuity of the done with you. You kind of weave all of that into a year, which I actually kind of like. Talk about the difference in, if there is any, in your side of your sales process. You mentioned, since you've been doing it, well, I don't know if you're doing it anymore, but is there different types of clients? Are you oh, they're at a certain level, I should go in with done for you? Or the other levels open your addressable market?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, usually all the discovery calls, are trying to figure out where they are, what their goals are, what their needs are. It's a very consultative approach. You're trying to diagnose, and see if we can solve. And so through that process, I usually still lay out all the options so they can kind of see there's 1, 2, or 3, you're in these buckets at these price points. But almost always you can tell they're either for sure in the I just want you to do everything, I don't care, or they're bouncing between the two because they're oh, I have an office manager or I have a designer that has some time, I might be able to have them implement, and they're debating. And then usually that's they're debating between those. But people that are the 20K is too much, then we kind of just focus on the DIY. It's hey, I'll set you up with a couple of free trials, jump into the programs. And that's definitely not a heavy focus of ours. It's the top 2 tiers, but we do know that bottom tier gets people into our world, and we do have people ascend. It's happened, and I'm sure it will continue to. But yeah, it's really just, I don't have, like when I go into those calls, and we're in the process of pulling me out of those calls, and so that'll be a big focus this year. But I'm not going in like I really want to sell X. I'm just going in trying to learn and see where there's a fit. Like there's probably a fit out of those 3 options. And so what I noticed really was before we were selling the retainer packages, so it'd be 3, 4, 5 grand a month or whatever, and people would just sign on for that. So it's basically full service is what we had. But what this did, and so that was like remodelers doing 2 to 10 million or something like that. But the Blueprint offering basically unlocked sub 2 million because people are like, I can't afford the full service, but I would love to know exactly what to do. And I got somebody that can spend a little bit of time on this. And it unlocked the higher end, like the $20 million companies that are like, they have 2 marketing people on staff, but they're like, we're hitting this wall. Like we need some outside expertise. We've got the time and the bandwidth to do the stuff. We just need you to tell us what to do and when and what order. So that's been the most interesting, I think, for me, is noticing it basically took our market from like this to like adding on those extensions.
I love that you said that. It's like my favorite thing about adding on this kind of like done with you tier, and maybe this is case by case, but like I'm like literally flashing conversations with clients and prospects through my head right now of like, well, once they know about the done for you, if they can't afford it, they're not going to want the done with you because you're presenting them all 3 options, right? Mm-hmm. It's like they might be that sub 2 million, and it makes no sense for them to invest into the 3.5 to 7K a month fee. Like they just can't pull it off, but they need the outcome. But now they feel like it's not as good enough of an outcome if they have to do it. Like, are you finding that there's still some people that like maybe they don't have that internal person, or they're like, oh no, I'm just going to go find someone cheaper to do this for me? Like, do you run into that a lot?
It still happens. Yeah. And I would say that's part of sales, right? Like not everyone's going to close, and that's okay. But I will say like the close rate is stronger. I mean, 3 options is better than 1 option, because 3 options are yours and 1 option is not yours, right? Saying no. Right. But the offer and the positioning and the packaging of it is so much stronger, and so, and people being able to look at it, it's super easy. It's like, you always start with the blueprint because that's how you get the best outcome. It just depends. Do you want us spending the time, or do you want to spend the time after to build? Either we build it or you build it. And so I think it's drawn more people into saying like, yeah, I'll do the blueprint and I'll figure out how to do the time part if they couldn't afford the full service. And so I think we've picked up more clients and been able to help more people, whereas before it just would have been like, sorry, I can't afford it. And it's like, well, all right, like, yeah, you're at $1 million. Like, I get it. I wouldn't be able to spend that either if that was my remodeling business. So yeah, I think it's just unlocked further conversations with more people because they have options. And if they believe in what you're doing and believe you can get the outcome, if you can show all the case studies and everything, then they want to work with you. And so you're just slotting them where they're ready, Yeah. Like we had a guy that listened to our podcast for 2 years, and he's like, I joined some of your like entry level stuff. He didn't know it was DIY, but he joined some of that stuff. And he's like, I knew I couldn't afford the higher end stuff, but he just kept building his business. And then he showed up last summer. We talked for 45 minutes and he did the blueprint in full service, and we're rolling, And so I think you have to be okay with playing the long game with some people and just meeting them where they actually are. And because if they're actually there, they can't do whatever the high end thing is.
Well, I want to kind of go back to the focusing on the remodeler piece, because you made a comment early on, like it made everything easier from marketing to fulfillment. I think the marketing one's a little bit obvious. And you covered a little bit. So can you hit on like maybe briefly on how did it change how you marketed and the benefit of that, but then go kind of a little bit deeper into how did it really benefit you on the delivery side that maybe some other folks listening that can't wrap their head around why narrowing down like this is going to make the delivery easier or simpler rather?
Yeah, on the marketing side, I mean, we just looked at it, we're like, okay, well, we branded our company around it, so now we're sending this signal. So if anyone hits our site, they're either in or they're out, right? They're either our remodeler or builder or they're not. But then we started just going down that chain. We're like, well, we have a podcast, well, that's Builder Funnel Radio. We have a YouTube, that's Builder Funnel TV. And it's like all the content was just centered around that. So you start getting found for that. All the blog articles are talking about things specific to remodelers, not just like how to increase lead gen generically, because now you're competing with all the big sites that are talking about lead gen for any industry. And so the more narrow it was, you actually got to stand out more in those little pockets. And then on sales calls too, like when you're talking to people, now you have all this content you can reference that's all hyper personalized to them, and all your case studies are personalized to them. So I think people are probably getting the sense of like how it impacts the marketing side. The delivery side, it's similar. Like, oh, this campaign like just went crazy for this one client over in Seattle. Like, let's roll it out across everybody, and so you can deliver, that result. But also if you have, oh, like, gosh, this campaign becomes a part of our standard first 1 or 2 months because it delivers quicker wins and we know it has a high probability of succeeding. So that increases your odds of success with your clients because it's worked for one, it's worked for a few, and now you build it on early, you get a quicker win, you start to see results. And so your lifetime value goes up. But now people know how to execute those campaigns at a high level because they're running them all the time. They're doing the same plays. Yeah. Oh, these blog topics are always great in all these different markets. Like, let's front load those. So you start to standardize delivery and then you can train to it. And then the strategy piece is like, that's where maybe the more experienced people are like building the strategy, and that's more nuanced, but then the execution becomes less nuanced. I mean, you can train and scale. Scale is overused, but I mean, you can train more people faster, doing the same things instead of having everyone that needs all of this unique knowledge,
Yes. Yeah. How many people are on your team?
We're about 20 right now.
20? Nice. And are you remote?
Yep. Yeah, we were like half and half maybe 5 years ago. And then, over the last couple of years, we've got maybe 4 people in Colorado Springs where headquarters is. But I mean, nobody ever comes in except me.
Where are you?
Colorado Springs.
Did you know I'm in Denver?
What? No, I didn't know that. Oh, well, we should have driven up there this morning.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, we'll have to hang out.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But we're all remote because I'm the only one that comes into the office. So
yeah, cool. The other thing I wanted to kind of cover is inside of that blueprint, it sounds like you offer a variety of things. You covered like how they approach content, blogging, the social side. You also, I think I heard you say some SEO stuff, but also paid. So you kind of cover the full gamut of quote unquote marketing, which in this example, I often don't mind when like people kind of combine a variety of these things to achieve a specific outcome. It works a lot better when you are specialized into such a homogenous market. And I think that's where some people struggle. And so like, that's what I think you probably gravitated towards, Alex's book. I mean, and a lot of people gravitated towards his book for a lot of reasons. But like, I think one thing that people don't pull out of this, and maybe this is the path you're going, but like with builders being so homogenous like that, the example of the social content in Canva that could like, hey, here it is, just swap out an image sort of thing. Like, that's content that could be licensed, right? Like, hey, this campaign we know works. Like, that's where you start licensing IP. For those that haven't watched my interview with Alex on our channel, you should check it out, because the thing that he talks about often is like having a sticky component to the offering. And in his case for the gyms, like they were giving their gyms ad campaigns that they knew would work because they were working in, their 20 test markets. It was as little as swap out, colors, logo, and images, but like copy was all the same. And because they worked with all of the same type of gym, they could all use it and it would work for everybody, which is what's great about what you're doing. Whereas some of you guys listening, you might not have the benefit of having such a homogenous market. And like some of those things might not be as plug and play. Alex would probably suggest that we would aim to do that. It's something we considered, but we kind of like a little bit of the diversity. It creates challenges for us for sure, but choose your hard, right? At the end of the day.
They all have challenging components. Like grass is always greener. Like they all have difficult parts.
Did you ever think like that as you kind of incorporated all elements of marketing, paid, SEO, content, did you ever think of not like removing it and only doing one of those things? Was that ever even like an option on the table? Like, hey, we're just going to focus on paid for remodelers.
It's funny. We didn't really consider that. And as you were kind of talking about that, I was like, I wonder why we didn't really look at just like, just doing paid or just doing SEO or something. And I think it was because like we started and we early on partnered with HubSpot as a partner agency. And so like we were pretty much drinking the Kool-Aid of like the full funnel approach, like the holistic approach. And And I think for our guys, like that made a lot of sense because somebody might do a Google search today and they're thinking about their kitchen that they're not going to do for a year. And it's like, well, we need to capture them. So we need to have a lead conversion component where we're thinking top of funnel. And then we need to be like on social, because if they're going to then pop over to their social and follow them there for 9 months and they're getting the emails. And so I could just see that like long buying cycle, long marketing cycle, long sales cycle, like we need to be kind of integrated a lot across a lot of channels. And I think I just like, I got it. Like it just makes sense to me like to have those components. And it was like, there's a framework, there's a methodology. I like that. And so I didn't ever think to do that. Although I'm sure we could have picked a couple components, just said we're going to get hyper specialized here.
Yeah,
but,
no, I mean, I'm glad you didn't. And I think like the long-term benefit for you obviously is high LTV and, multi-year retention, because a lot of it's not like a negative, but like a lot of folks that we come across, like I don't want to say a one-dimensional skill, but like they've only ever done paid ads, for example. We don't actually deal with a ton of lead gen agencies, so I'm not sure why I'm using that example, but like they're really good at paid ads. But like I think you silo down to any one type of skill set or service, there's always the risk of over time that starting to feel like a commodity because you're just kind of paying. It's almost like you pay someone to run your ads is very similar to, in my opinion, the feeling that one would get of like paying for web hosting, right? Like it becomes very mechanical and it's like, there's a certain amount of time you're like, oh, like we could bring this in-house, for more affordable or, not have to pay a percentage of ad spend or whatever agencies are doing these days. But when you have like, oh, well, like in phase one, we're focusing on this, but then we can add on this and then we can add on this. And the blueprint shows the sequence of, which do you do in which order so that you don't kill yourself. You start to see the future, like the client can see the future of like, oh yeah, like we have all of these things left to do. It's a conversation we have with our clients. Like, how do you show them what's coming? Like you have to always be showing them the future and what the future can look like, which helps with retention. And so you having this whole blueprint, I think helps as a one document, like, hey, look, like we can show you what we're going to be likely doing in, 6 months from now, assuming all of these things are working as fast. So I think that's to your advantage. As you started building this out, something we hear a lot from agencies, like what you do, like if for anyone that's been listening, it sounds like what you do is very hands-on when you do the done for you. Like there's a lot of work. There's a lot of things you're building and managing, creating. How did you navigate the transition into the making it so easy that they can do it? Because the common narrative in this environment is like, well, my client won't want to do it or they just won't do it. But as we've kind of alluded to earlier, there's a segment of the market, both lower and higher, that will be willing to do it. So can you kind of talk through that? Like my client won't actually do this. It's just easier for me to do it on their behalf.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about. Maybe we kind of, lucked into it in a way, but as we were building our old model of retainers, like we were bringing in lots of like young marketers out of college. And so we built really good training videos and SOPs to train everyone as they're coming in. And a lot of our people, like they start as an intern or a specialist, they build their way up. That's our current president who runs all of operations. Like she started there too and like worked her way up. And so when we built the blueprint, we were like, well, gosh, this is a lot of stuff. If they're going to do it, like they need to have all the tools. And so we kind of just like locked in that phrase, like we need to have like a marketing intern be able to implement this. And so, every line item was like, hey, this is how you write a blog. Here's the training video on how to incorporate SEO and internal links and heading structure, all the like nuanced detail. And then there'd be like a doc that's the SOP. So they had the video and the SOP to go with it. But when we deliver the blueprint, we give them like, it's extreme detail. This is the blog title. It should be 1,000 words. This is the summary of the blog. These are the questions you should answer in the blog. This is the keyword research. That's for one blog. And we're usually given, 24 or 36 articles a year that they're going to write 2 or 3 a month. And so they have that.
And
plus the training.
Those are all fresh being generated? Like new?
We create that in the blueprint. Yeah, like that's what's in here. So and that's why it's a 1-year thing, because we're giving them like, these are the things to do this year. And then next year it's going to be, these are new titles, but now these blogs we need to go back and historically optimize because 2022 is out of date. So we're going to go and update this. We're going to beef it up. We're going to use that equity in that old URL to get stronger, so like there's nuance and layers like year over year. And so when people renew, like, yeah, maybe we don't need to do the market research again, but we layer in like, now there's automation, now there's like video, now there's new things to incorporate, kind of like you said, like you're going to layer in these things. We just do it annually with the blueprint instead of like quarterly or every 6 months. And we do those check-ins just in case like, hey, this isn't working, we need to make a pivot or something. But generally, I think people fail with marketing, thinking about our clients because they aren't consistent for long enough. And so getting people to think longer term, sign on to longer term things, and just do it. Like do it for a year. Like you'll be a lot further along than you are.
Have you had any clients be like, or prospects hesitant on the year commitment?
It used to happen more, but people don't really, they don't get hung up as much anymore. And I'm trying to figure out why. It's a good question. I mean, and I think part of it might be like everyone goes through the blueprint. And when they get the blueprint, I mean, you go through that thing. I mean, it's literally 130 to 150 pages of like all of our research and findings and then the plan for the next year. And they're like, holy cow, like the year's laid out. So it just makes sense that I would sign on for a year if they're going to do the done for you.
When you do the blueprint in the done with you format, are they just going through it or that's always done for you?
The blueprint? Yeah, we always build the blueprint for them. Yeah. And so they get, they get the printed book, they get the PDF version, and then they get the Asana board. That's basically a 12-month checklist of everything they need to do in every single month with the training videos, the SOPs, all the details. So they can literally log in. They're like, it's February. Here's my checklist. And here's the how to do all those things right there. Just follow the checklist.
What tool are you using to manage all that?
Asana. So we just give them access. Like we build the board and then give them access to it. And and that's part of what they get access to is the Asana board with all the links to the training. And so if they renew, they just keep it. But then we do a new board for them for the next year. And then if they don't want to, then they're done and they go on their way. And maybe they learned enough.
So unlike most agencies that I talk to, it sounds like you market yourself.
Pretty
actually do marketing. So can you talk a little bit about what are you guys currently doing to get clients? What's working?
Yeah, I'll try to just break it down really quick. So we do regular blogging on our site. At this point, we have 3 different podcasts. It used to be just one. We've been doing one for several years. Builder Funnel Radio, I do that one. It's either marketing topics or I bring in guests. We do remodeler stories. This is a great topic for anyone thinking about a niche. I literally find remodelers that would be my client, bring them on to the show, talk about their journey as an entrepreneur, as a remodeler for 30 minutes, and then we promote them. And so it's a great connection builder, like build people into the funnel. So we do those 2. And then we have another one that our team does. And that's more like, case studies and real tactical stuff, like stuff we're doing this week or this month, real recent stuff. And so we run 2 of those weekly. The remodeler stories, we oscillate between like 1 and 3 times a week because sometimes it's easy to book those. We do a YouTube channel, so we do 1 video a week, educational. We only just do 1 trade show a year, really. And it's hyper focused. It's all of our target audience. It's pretty small. It's like 200 to 400 people, but it's like almost like 80% of it could be our client. And then we'll do some like guest webinars and guest, stuff like that for other coaches in the space, that do sales coaching for remodelers. But it's a lot of the stuff that we do for our clients, like content marketing is the core of what we do. We do very little paid. We're trying to figure that out, but I don't know. We're still working on it.
I love it. One final question before like kind of parting words is, and if you don't have to share if you're not willing to, but like percentage breakdown right now of like people taking the done for you versus the done with you versus the DIY, like of the total revenue, what percentage does it look like currently?
Yeah, the last time I ran it, I'm pretty sure it was right around 75% do the full package. They want us to do it. And then I haven't broken it down to the DIY. I just think about the top 2. So 75, 25. And then we just pick up some people into the DIY. And so far, again, we're pretty new into it, but all of the original blueprints that we did that were self-implementers, so the middle, the done with you, they've all renewed for year 2. So we think that's a good sign.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I thought it was interesting when we first launched it, like last year, the first 3 quarters were tough. Like Q4, we sold our first few, and then it was like really slow. Our industry was bonkers busy, so they didn't care about marketing. And so we didn't sell our first blueprint into implementation until like May or something. And it was like, man, maybe everyone's just going to do the blueprint. They don't actually want us to do. So we like churned some clients, and we were hitting the zone where it was like blueprints were kind of like bumping us up a little bit. But then once the market kind of normalized, I would say like remodeling is still in like a normalized phase. They're just from 2 years ago, like everything went nuts. So yeah, Q4 was bananas for us, and Q1's looking like we're booked out. We're not kicking off blueprints until May because we're booked out that far. And so that's the other thing we've done, is just saying we only have X slots per month. So when you get on a call, it's added a little bit of urgency. And I never try to pressure people. It's just not my style. I want people to make a big ticket decision, not like it's the right thing for your business, but it has like people are like, oh, that spot's gone. Then I can just email like that spot's gone now, our next spot is in here. And so people are kind of like getting the message. So I feel like we're hitting this like momentum shift now after being into trying to sell something new, trying to sell something that was much higher price at the beginning, figuring out like the handoffs internally. So yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. Maybe it will for some people, but it didn't for us.
I mean, it took us like kind of 11 months to like really have the done with you piece start to rival / surpass the done for you piece, which I would actually still say, depending upon where you're at in your agency when you start this, that's probably like an average. Like, I mean, I've had clients that were like more kind of they had fewer legacy clients that they were dealing with, and they made the switch like in 90 days, which I'd say is extremely fast, not common. But like, yeah, you kind of got to look at like, if the goal is to have this done with you thing, and not everyone will, replace and surpass done for you revenue, which I know some want, you're looking at least a year process, depending upon, what sort of baggage you're coming with.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't really that wasn't really our goal, I guess, to replace the done for you. But that's interesting.
Necessarily ours either. It wasn't like, it just accidentally kind of
happened that way.
And then it got to the point where we were like, well, do we want to do done for you anymore?
Yeah, interesting.
And we chose not to. But what I do think is actually interesting is that like we have conversations all the time of bringing a done for you layer back. And so while I do think it does help with focus of like, hey, like kind of like you said, we're going to start selling this and this being our focus, just with like the delivery vehicle where you're like, hey, like we want to really like further fine tune the done with you delivery piece. Let's lower the capacity of done for yous, force the sale of the done with you, get more experience there, raise the price of the done for you possibly, and then kind of come back and reintroduce it. So I think there's seasons, and that's the great thing. There's just so many variations to how you can actually do this. But nonetheless, the 3 tiers is pretty powerful. So, dude, thank you so much for reaching out. For any random builder or remodelers watching the YouTube channel or listening to the show, check out builderfunnel.com. You're obviously on social. Where else can people find you?
Yeah, honestly, if you just want to connect with me, LinkedIn's probably the best, or just hit up our website and shoot me a message and get connected there. Yeah, thanks for having me on. This was fun. It's fun to talk to you this stuff.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out. And we'll have to link up now that I know you're 40 minutes away.
Yeah, 45 minutes. Yeah, for sure.
I hope you enjoyed the video with me and Spencer. If you want to watch the same video that he watched around the 3 income streams that all agencies need to have that kind of sparked a lot of this conversation, go click here and check it out.